when I started in this field, or like more than 10 years ago, I was aware that in this part of the world, I mean, there was lots of activism for zero waste at that time, that even dates back to before those days. So I'm humbled and honored to speak here today, and I really hope that what the experience that we're going to provide today is going to help move zero waste forward this time and for all in the Northwest. So as Judy has said, I'm the director of Zero Waste Europe. I'm based in Brussels, where we coordinate the network of zero waste best practices, but also try to influence European policy. Our role is to empower communities to redesign our relationship with resources. And the way we are organized is at two levels. First of all, we support local groups, such as Zero Waste Northwest, with knowledge and tools to drive change. And I'll give some examples of how we have done that in other parts in Europe, but also in the world. And we also structure the movement internationally to represent the interests of our communities. I mean, we believe that we all live in the same planet, and there's no such a thing called away. And therefore, we should all care about each other. So we represent these communities in Europe in front of the decision makers in Brussels. So why zero waste? If you are in this room, the why, I think, is the fastest thing to get an answer. So you know, we live in a linear society that extraction, production, distribution, consumption, disposal. It has been like this since the Industrial Revolution. This is not an accident. We live in a society that lives out of producing things that don't last, that break, that are not repairable, that are not durable, and that will need to be disposed as soon as possible in order to have to buy a new thing and trigger like this the wheel of consumption, which is an economic model that has worked very well. But the problem is that, of course, we live in a planet with limited resources, and I think we are approaching the wall. We are about to hit the wall. And it is in this framework that, this is a graph from the European Environmental Agency that came out like 2 or 3 years ago, when the debate about the circular economy was starting to become the norm in Brussels. And right now the debate is really hot, and I'll talk about it. But as you can see, the idea is that we have to close the material loop of resources. The European Union, Europe, is the poorest continent on Earth when it comes to resources. We're fully dependent on the imports of energy and goods from the rest of the world. So if you cut here to create your circular economy, we should cut on imports, but also cut on incineration and landfilling. I'll touch briefly about the drivers at EU level. Just because, as you know, it's at the European level that policies are decided that later on will be transposed to national law, and then it will need to be implemented at the local level. First of all is the Landfill Directive, which I think is one of the most important pieces of legislation when it comes to European environmental policy, that states that biodegradable municipal waste going to landfills must be reduced to a total of 35% of the total amount by the base year of 1995 by 2016. And also that all waste should undergo pretreatment operation. 1999, the driver, why this came into force was because it was a time where landfills were overflowing in Europe. We had a serious issue with the methane being released, leachates being released from landfills, and the goal of the European Union was to get waste out of landfills, hopefully into recycling, but it could also end up into incineration. Back then, we were very active saying that, watch out, because you might get waste out of landfills, but you might, by trying to solve a problem, you might create another one if instead of recycling, you end up over-investing in incineration. And we'll see later that that's what has happened in countries such as Germany, Sweden, or Denmark. And the fact that all waste should undergo pretreatment operations before going to landfill, that means also that either you separately collect it and you recycle it or compost it, or you send it to a mechanical biological treatment plant where you can also do the same thing or prepare RTF, or you can send it to incineration, which is also a pre-treatment operation. Let's remember that incineration is not in the end of a process. It's just a pre-treatment operation before you send the ashes to landfill. So this Landfill Directive was very good, as I said, to get waste out of landfills. It was not very good to get this waste into recycling. Some of it went to recycling, the high-value materials. Some of it went to incineration. Lots of it ended up being exported. Then in 2010, the Waste Framework Directive entered into force, where there's many things that are interesting in there, but first of all is the waste hierarchy, the famous prevention, reuse, recycle, energy recovery and disposal, but also setting the targets of 50% recycling for 2020, which is something that is, it needs to be enforced everywhere in the European Union, also in this part of Europe, and which means that, yes, you'll have to get to 50% recycling by 2020. These have been the drivers so far. We have other directives, such as the Packaging Directive and incineration. But I would say that these are the main drivers. But when we look at the future, and that's important because it's not a matter of just implementing the past policy, but what is coming next. Because if you want to build infrastructure for the next years, you have to bear in mind what are the tendencies. It's all the debate about circular economy. And the debate right now in the European Union is about live products. Are we continue to If we want to close the loop, we have to change the way we produce. We have to make products that are more durable, that are easier to repair, that are easier to recycle. Toxics. I mean, most of the limits of recycling are imposed by the fact that lots of the products that are today being recycled are actually have a good amount of toxics. And if we were to have a real circular economy, what you would have is that you would be circulating toxics more and more. Therefore, you have to create a circular economy without toxics, not only because of safety reasons from a health perspective, but also from industrial production safety as well. You want to have products that you can actually trust, that you can that they will perform, that they will not have toxics, so they will not endanger the production process. Also, energy. So far, the European Union, when it has been talking about waste, has been focusing too much on getting energy out of waste. Problem with that is that the energy that you can get out of burning waste is minimal, is residual, and combustion has never been a very efficient way to generate energy. Whereas the real energy is in the embedded energy in the materials. It takes lots of energy to produce a product. So the best thing we can do is make sure that this product is going to be in use for as long as possible, and at the end of its life, it's going to be recycled. So instead of looking at energy generation, we're looking at energy preservation. That's also changing the mindset. And all of that is discussions that are going to take place in the next 2-3 years. The European Commission will come up with a proposal end of this year, and the debate will start. What we know for sure is that the waste package, there's going to be a legislative proposal that's going to be presented in October or November, where there's going to be a recycling target of 70% for 2030. There's going to have also 80%, for example, recycling target for packaging waste. And the burning or landfilling of recyclables is going to be progressively phased out. So you see, I mean, the tendencies are clear. We need to have a flexible system that will allow us to increase recycling, but also we have to change the way that we are producing and consuming. To summarize, what has changed in the EU policy is that in the 20th century, we were talking about waste management. The issue was safety, how to get rid of our waste efficiently with minimum damage to our health and the environment. So that was safety, that was the concern, whereas in the 21st century, because of what I've just explained, it's about resource management. It's how do we handle resources in a way in which we keep the value and we keep the energy into the resources for as long as possible. This is a game changer, because the way that we were thinking about waste in the past is not useful anymore. the infrastructure that we were using in the past to safely dispose of our waste are not appropriate today. Because it's not about environment and health anymore. It's about economics, reindustrialization, resource dependency, jobs, competitiveness. These are not my words. This is the European Commission saying that. This is why all these conversations about circular economy, it's not DG Environment, it's not the Directorate General in Environment in the European Union that is dealing with that. It's DG Trade, it's DG Industry, it's the Jobs and Growth, etc. Because it's at the core of the competitive agenda of the EU for the next years. And as you can imagine, if you look at waste with the lenses of environment, you might want just to prevent damage. But if you look at waste from with the lenses of jobs and employment, what you want to do is make sure that you have as much repair, as much reuse as possible, as much innovation in order to generate jobs. And we think, today in the European Union, there's more progressive people about zero waste. For example, in the job and competitivity departments than in environmental departments, which is quite surprising. Very quickly, what is zero waste? If we would summarize it in 3 principles. First of all, change the idea that waste is something you want to get rid of. For what I said before, waste is a mistake. If you want to fix a mistake, you have to know what you are doing wrong, so you have to make it visible. You don't want to make waste disappear anymore. You want to make it very visible so that you can know where is the problem. Is it the problem of bad separate collection? Is it the problem with the design? That is important. Bringing in the philosophy of the cradle to cradle, separating biological cycles from technical cycles, which allow you to keep the value of resources and treat them properly. If a product can be reused, repaired, refurbished, recycled, or composted, it needs to be redesigned or taken out of the system. And this can be done in a variety of ways, as I will explain. Just an example, and I could give you hundreds. The exfoliant of any creams or soaps that big brands are using, this is PET, this is fully recyclable, but as you can see, the way it is designed, this is all washed away, ends up in the rivers, ends up entering the trophic chain. There's no hope we can recycle this, even though it's fully recyclable. Therefore, we have to redesign the system, and that's why, for example, Holland has banned the use of PET exfoliants into soaps. This is just one example. The second principle, if we have, once we have redesigned products so that they don't have toxics and they are designed to be reused and recycled, is that you have to keep the things separate and ensure an excellent separate collection so that no recyclables or compostables can end up in disposal facilities. We generate waste when we mix stuff. If we keep things separated, that's no waste. These are resources that we can use. And well, this is just one graph about the costs, because many people say that, well, recycling is expensive, separate collection costs money. Based on our experiences, but also on the studies that the European Commission has been using, like this one, and this is quite an old one from 2008, we can see that in the green line you see how the separate collection rates, and in orange the costs. The more you separately collect, the cheaper it is in the long term. After my presentation, Enzo Favoino, the chair of the Scientific Committee of Zero Waste Europe, will go deeper into the cost analysis of this, so you'll be able to have a proper explanation about this. So then, if we redesign products to close the loop and we keep everything separated, we'll get to 100% recycling. But we believe that that's not enough. That's not enough, because even if we would recycle 100% of what is out there, would still be unsustainable. And we need to stop superfluous waste and reduce resource and product use. An example of that is food waste. Food waste is fully biodegradable. We can compost it, we can make energy out of it, we can separately collect it, but still, when we are landfilling or burning 30 to 50% of the food that is bought today in Europe, what makes sense is to reduce it at source and to stop wasting food instead of finding better ways to recycle it. Another way, for example, is improving packaging and And distribution, we've seen really lots of shops coming up in Europe about selling in bulk local products. This one on the left is in Barcelona, the one in the lower right is in Italy, the one on the upper right side is in Berlin. We're seeing how proximity products are going up in the market, finding new ways to sell local products, for example, without packaging, is also something that is becoming more and more trendy. But this is just one example. Basically, another way to look at the thing is traditional waste management in the European Union so far has been that 60 to 80% of the waste was going to landfills or incinerators or co-incinerators, cement kilns, with a bit of recycling and a bit of composting normally. Generally, it was a low-quality recycling, and well, that's a system that is working in many places in Europe, and still, I believe, is very much a situation today in this part of Europe, as it is in the south as well. But what we're talking about is the zero waste scenario, where the question is not whether it's better to landfill or incinerate, because we are in a different scenario. It's in a scenario where we are capturing most of the organics that are in the system to compost them. We are recycling what can be recyclable. We are repairing and reusing a lot more. We are preventing waste. And we are actually screening what is in the residual waste. Going back to the first principle I mentioned before, it's very important to look what it is today that we cannot recycle, what the system cannot recycle, so that we can change the system to make it recyclable in the future. It might mean redesigning the product, or it might mean redesigning the process of distribution, the process of consumption, etc. I'm now going to give you some examples of how that is happening in different places in Europe. This is the example of Contarina, which are 50 municipalities, more than 500,000 people. That's north of Venice in Italy, which is the best performing district in Europe. They get to, in the year 2000, they were in an average of around 30% separate collection. And with the introduction of curbside collection and then pay as you throw, now they are at 85% and going up. At the same time, jobs in this sector, direct jobs, we can see in the lower left graph that have been increasing, and the costs of running this system are the lowest in Italy. This works with a curbside collection with different waste streams, with green, paper, glass, plastic cans, residual waste, organic waste, which is a very tailor-made process. With a pay-as-you-throw fee, you have a fixed fee, this according to the number of people that live in the household, and then a variable fee that is according to how much waste you produce, you will pay more or less. And if you do home composting, for example, you get a reduction of 30% on your fee. So actually, these are incentives so that doing the right thing, it is cheaper and it is easier than doing the wrong thing. The problem and to summarize, that's what I'm finding in most places. If it is cheaper and easier to do the right thing, the people, even if they don't know anything about the environment, they will do the right thing. And vice versa. Future goals, even though they are at 85%, by 2022, they have the goal of getting to 96.7% of recycling. But more important than that is that they want to continue reducing the residual waste. Right now, they are sending to landfill 53 kilograms per habitant per year. The European average is around 270. So as you can see, this is a lot lower, but they want to go down to 10 kilograms per person per year by 2022. And they're moving in this direction already, I can tell you. Guipúzcoa, that's in the Spanish Basque Country, north of Spain. They had a similar system, it's just that they started not too long ago. Only 4 years ago, they were facing an incineration proposal. They stopped incinerators, civil society working with elected officials, and they started implementing door-to-door separate collection with pay-as-you-throw schemes, which, as you can see in this graph here on the left, caused that in gray the residual waste dropped in only 1 year, and in a matter of months we managed to double, triple, sometimes even quadruple the recycling rates. There is a video that I don't know if we'll be able to see later, but about the experience of Gipuzkoa. This is about separate collection of organics. They do home composting, they do community composting. More than 30% of the people in Gipuzkoa now do home composting, when the average only 4 years ago was zero that we know. I mean, of course, some people were doing it. They have changed also the way that they go shopping. They go shopping fish and meat with plastic containers. You have ways to refill the milk containers, water. You have reuse shops. You have, again, selling local products in bulk. All that has allowed the waste to go down. This is the project of incinerator that was supposed to be built and was stopped. And here you'll see this is the region of Gipuzkoa. It's about the size of Northern Ireland. In white, you see the districts that are recycling less than 50% of the waste. As you can see, in 2008, all of them were under 50%. And in green, you will see how the districts that are recycling more than 70%. In 2009, we started with the first pilot projects in 3 municipalities, and they got to more than 70%. 2011, we got more on board. 2014, and as you can see, and the thing continues. If we continue like this, in the next years, we'll be able to get to 70, 80% recycling rates. So it's a matter of 5-6 years, which is less than it would have taken only to build the incinerator. And if it had been built, this incinerator, you can see this red line was the capacity, the fixed capacity of the incinerator, 260,000 tons. But you can see how the waste generation, the waste available to burn, has been decreasing because of this effort in source separation, which means that had this incineration been built, by the moment it would open its doors, it would be already an economic fiasco. We would need to start importing waste. And on top of that, we have saved 250 million of euros that we can invest now in other infrastructures. The infrastructures that we have built to deal with the waste to manage the waste in Gipuzkoa have a cost of around 140 million. So we have saved around like 60% of the costs in infrastructures that are more flexible, that work better, and they are for recycling and composting waste, not for burning waste. Another example, Ljubljana, which is the capital of Slovenia. It's the first EU capital to declare the zero waste in Europe. We should remember that Slovenia entered the European Union in 2004. UK and Ireland have been in the European Union for a lot longer. My country, Spain, has been there for long as well. But they only, in 10 years, they have managed to increase separate collection in a quite impressive way. You can see in 2004, they were collecting separately only 15 kilograms per capita per year. Now they are, and in brown you can see the organics, in green the glass, in yellow the paper, etc. Situation has changed. And as you can see, if in 10 years you can manage to go from 0 to 61%, that is where they are today, imagine if they had built an incinerator. And around the year 2012, they were thinking about building an incinerator. So like, well, now we are doing well, we're going to do like the Northern Europeans. Let's build an incinerator. But that's when they contacted us, and we brought them to see the experience in Contarina, the one in Italy that I just showed you. And they saw that actually, if you want to continue increasing to 80, to 90, to 95, to 96% recycling, if you build an incinerator, what you're doing is locking yourself into that limit for recycling. And they decided to implement the alternative system that we were suggesting. As you can see here, how waste decreased to more than half of what it used to be. Summarizing, you can see now 61% recycling rate in Ljubljana, 15% waste reduction, and a reduction in the waste sent for disposal of around 60%. That's in Ljubljana. This is Southern Europe, Mediterranean countries. We are a disaster, you see, but if we can make it there, I think you can make it here too. Just to compare, Ljubljana in Slovenia is generating 283 kilograms per capita per year, thanks to having the right policies, thanks to having good prevention and reuse policies, 61% recycling, 0% incineration. Copenhagen, which is still sold as a good practice to follow, they generate a lot of waste, 425 kilograms per person. They are 32% recycling, and they are burning 65%. Copenhagen, the same as Denmark, is rethinking the whole strategy regarding incineration. As I said before, in a 20th century mindset in which you want to safely dispose of your waste, incineration might have had a place, but that's not the case anymore. Today, Denmark has a goal of being carbon neutral by 2050, and burning waste is not a carbon neutral way to generate energy. And a very important thing is that we promote is that zero waste is zero waste to landfill and zero waste to incineration. Because if you burn waste, you will still, first of all, it's not a circular economy anymore because you are breaking the cycle. Second, whatever you burn will create some ashes that need to be landfilled anyway, so you still need the landfill. And third, the zero waste to landfill is blind when it comes to waste reduction. You can double your waste generation, burn all of it, and it's still zero waste to landfill. When Sweden says that they recycle 99% of the waste, what they're saying is that they are recycling around 45%, and they're burning more than 50% of the waste. That, for us, is not zero waste. That's zero waste to landfill, but zero waste to landfill is useless if you are not increasing recycling, if you are not reducing waste generation. And that's why Europe is divesting from incineration. Today, Germany has overcapacity. They are offering, Sweden has overcapacity, Denmark has overcapacity, Holland is having overcapacity, and what is happening is that these people have invested in incinerators in the 90s. They are not building a new incinerator now. They have depreciated costs on incineration, which means that they are now offering very competitive prices if you want to send your waste to be burned there. But if you would happen to build an incinerator here, where you will have to depreciate your costs over the next years, you will be of course it will be a disaster for your recycling rates, but it will also not be competitive with these rates of these people that basically have incinerators that they want to use for burning waste from abroad because they don't have enough waste to burn there. And that's why Denmark has now the official policy of, this is the official program, Denmark without waste, recycle more, incinerate less. And it's already started designing the strategy out of incineration. In Denmark, which used to be the country that was the model to follow. Now the model is more in the south. If you want to learn more about our case studies, these are all available in our website. What I've been explaining, it's not theory. This is already happening. These are tendencies happening in the European Union. These are case studies with the concrete examples of concrete places where you can read how we manage to do that and why is it working well, why they have less costs, why they have generated more jobs, and why recycling rates are going up. We have also a website called zerowastecities.eu, where actually you can benchmark cities. You can see, unfortunately we don't have any city around here, but we have our zero waste towns in there, and you can compare with cities that are not zero waste, such as Paris or London or Denmark, etc. And then you can export that information and for your knowledge. For us, it's very important not to have the picture today, but to see the tendency. So we try to take a picture of where were we 5 years ago, where are we today, where do we want to go? Because if you look at the tendency, and if you plan infrastructure, you have to look at the tendency, what kind of waste are we going to have in 10 years' time? Is it going to be the same waste as we have today? Probably not, because of what I was saying about the circular economy. We're going to have different products that are going to last longer, that are going to be more recyclable, then the burnable or the disposable fraction of the waste that we have today is not going to be there in 10 years' time. Also, the systems of separate collection, be it at source or be it mechanical sorting, are going to change. So to conclude, why zero waste? First of all, because it provides a durable solution that is faster, cheaper, and more flexible to implement. Faster, you've seen, if you want in 4 or 5 years, you can get to more than 80% recycling. That has happened. It can happen again. It will continue to happen. It is cheaper. You've seen the example of Guipúzcoa. And it's more flexible because it allows you to have a system that you can increase recycling without having to hijack your future recycling rates. Second, it keeps most of the money spent on the system and in the local area. I think that's very important. I mean, you can decide to spend 150 million euros in an incinerator here, or you can decide to invest in separate collection, in raising awareness, in reuse shops, in eco-innovation, redesigning products, in composting plants, in recycling plants, etc., etc., etc. Waste is money, and we should not waste this money. Zero waste keeps the money in the local community. Also, it integrates higher education into solution. Something that we have seen as a kind of externality is that in the places where we have implemented zero waste strategies, we have made visible the waste that was not recyclable. So what happened? Then we had to, well, activists or city officials had to go to universities or had to go to companies and say like, okay, let's look at this coffee capsule. This coffee capsule is aluminum and it's coffee grounds. They are both recyclable, but if they are together, we cannot do anything with it. How do we redesign that? Nappies, same thing. Shoes, for example. It's another thing that we find in landfills, and it should be redesigned because we have been producing shoes the same way for the last decades. Maybe we have to rethink the way that we're producing shoes and we are disposing of shoes. So it integrates higher education. You need eco-innovation, you need education into the solution. If you have a dump, landfill, or an incinerator, there's no driver for eco-innovation or to invest in education. It is better for the local economy and it's better for the planet. So as a summary, the message is that we can do it, we are doing it. The famous person here is the one on the left, is Rossano Ercolini, the president of Zero Waste Europe, who happened to meet Obama because he won the Goldman Prize in 2013. Goldman Prize is the equivalent to the Green Nobel Prize. And he's a primary school teacher in a town called Capanori, 50,000 inhabitants in Tuscany, in Italy. And he started 20 years ago opposing an incinerator because they wanted to build an incinerator next to the primary school. And people said, well, nothing is going to happen, these incinerators are safe, etc. Well, he stopped that incinerator, but he didn't stop there. So like, now we don't have the incinerator, let's go to implement the alternative. So they started mobilizing, and together with other people, civil society and policymakers, they implemented an alternative source separation scheme. Now they are at more than 80% recycling. They have reuse centers, and he's leading the zero waste movement around Italy. They were the first one to declare the zero waste goal in 2007. Now in Italy, we have more than 250 municipalities that are going this direction. And soon even Rome is also going to follow this path. So if the Italians do it, I think that you can do it, and I really encourage you to follow the zero waste path. Thanks a lot.